All right. I am so excited to be talking to producer, writer, director, Angel Kristi Williams. She has really left a mark on the culture. I'm really excited about the work that she is doing, has done, and will do. The projects that she's chosen to work on that I have had the opportunity to watch have been absolutely phenomenal. We know her from directing Really Love, but also other projects from shooting on directing Cherish the Day and Colin's new show on Netflix that's about to drop, Colin in Black and White, as well as other projects that I have a chance to kind of get familiar with the Christmas Tree in Charlotte. And so the list goes on of projects that you've chosen to write and share with us as the audience, as the listeners, as the viewers, to tingle our senses. How are you today? Welcome.
I'm well. How are you? Thank you for having me. I was so excited to talk to you, first of all. So yeah.
Thank you. You know, it's funny because I know Jimmy Thomas Jr. and he speaks so highly of you.
I love Jimmy so much. He is a very, very special artist and just human being. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Let's talk about, for you, getting started in film in Baltimore and kind of what that influence and community was like. Because very clearly you're like, I'm from Baltimore. You let everybody know out the gate, like, this is what it is. And so how has that been for you, nurturing your craft and skill in Baltimore and then moving away?
Yeah, so, I went to college in Baltimore. I started at University of Maryland, College Park, but then finished at UMBC. So my early films were made in Baltimore. So I was, like filming my friends and my community and, just that's kind of where I started in terms of having this desire to be an image maker, right? Was, just filming where I grew up and my family and those Black people that I saw all around me. And so it wasn't until, after I finished college, I was working at Discovery Channel in Silver Spring, and it was, very corporate, but also I was on the post-production side and didn't feel very creative. And it was there that I was like, okay, I want to pursue a master's. And so I left Baltimore and then went to Chicago to get an MFA in writing and directing, but kept writing stories that were set in Baltimore. Even when I was making my short film, The Christmas Tree in Chicago, I was like, scouring the city, trying to find the side of Chicago that felt the most like Baltimore because I couldn't go back to Baltimore. And then, my final film that I made as a grad student, I actually returned to Baltimore to make it. So, it's something that has always been in me and a part of me, and it incorporates the stories that I know. And so for my feature, the story was already set in the DMV, and I was just like, oh, another opportunity to go home and make this work. But sometimes you go outside. It's only until you go outside that you can appreciate where you're from. And that's kind of what happened for me. It took me leaving Baltimore to really be able to come back and see the city from a different point of view.
I think what I first of all, I love to hear you talk. Love to hear you talk. It's the way that it's like your relationship with language and how you describe images and moods and things of that nature. The different interviews that I've saw of you, I was just like, oh my gosh, it's like, not only are you good with visuals and piecing it together and having this story in your mind, but it's the way that you talk about the stories that you create, or being a creative that makes people who love the work, love your work, even more excited about the work that you do. So,
thank you.
Yeah, so it's interesting because let's talk about Really Love. Really Love is out, and it is so blackety black. Like it was so black. I remember I've watched it. I was talking to Jimmy about this. I watched it.
Hey, did you come to the screening in Baltimore?
I did.
You did. And you introduced yourself to me.
I did.
Yes. Oh my goodness. I remember. Yeah. Now I'm piecing it all together. That was such a whirlwind of a night. Oh my goodness. It was such a whirlwind, so magical.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. I just felt so, being a transplant, I'm from Tennessee. So being a transplant and doing radio in Baltimore and getting familiar with just people and going out into the community, and then to see a story where you're talking about things that I now can relate to and that I have a relationship with, the whole PG County versus DC, that conversation was so funny to me because I was just like, yeah, like B-more is its own place. Like it's not a part of the DMV. It's like, but you don't really know that unless you've been here and experienced the places and the locations. And so you captured that so beautifully. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about your film is obviously the intention behind creating a safe space for us to be unapologetically Black. Talk to me about the importance of that and making this film feel very familiar and safe and comfortable, no matter your demographic.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, thank you. I'm glad you felt that. I mean, one of the very important things for me in terms of behind the camera was I wanted, all of my actors who were in front of the camera to see themselves, right, behind the camera, so whether that was me, costume designer, head of makeup, head of hair, you know what I mean? Cinematographer, I just wanted there to be as many Black and brown people and women, you know what I mean, that made up the crew. And my producers were as passionate about that as I was, and also just having conversations with folks. Like, I am someone who I feel that I'm unapologetically Black, like, and it's, I also though like to exist in the world, right, where I'm, it's not always about my Blackness. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted this story to not be about them being Black. Like I wanted them to be able to just like, live and breathe and move in the world as if like it doesn't matter. We both know that it does, but I just wanted it to be like this moment where DC felt like Chocolate City again. I was very intentional about like it being Black people everywhere, right? And when we saw a white person into the story, like it was very intentional and very specific. Mm-hmm. So my AD knew like when we bring in extras, they need to be Black. You know what I mean? That is, I'm creating this world and it's the only opportunity that we get to create the world that we want to live in. And so, I took every opportunity to create that space, you know what I mean? That we that we yearn for. And so, I think that like that intention, the actors could feel that. And also just that, like, I love, and everybody that helped me make this film, they love Black people. Even the white people who were on set, like, they love Black people and they love the story that we were telling. And if they didn't, then by the end of it, I guarantee you they loved us. So, like, it was just about like creating that energy that I wanted to feel and that I wanted everybody to feel.
Being a director and being behind the lens, there were scenes where it was so close. It was such a close up, like when Isaiah Maxwell was painting, or when you had Stevie was kind of sitting by herself. Tell me the importance of those super close up shots, because I loved it. When I saw them, I was like, oh my God, look at their skin. I just want to bite it. Like, tell me the importance of that.
Yeah, so part of it was designed, and then also, my DP, Sean Peters, and then a camera operator, Hans Charles, who's a Howard alum and also a cinematographer. Like, they just, the first time, and we recognized this in the camera test, I mean, we knew that we had cast just these two beautiful Black people. But once we saw them in frame, like with those lenses that we were shooting with, Hans and Sean were just like, every opportunity they had to be close and to be macro, they took it. And so it kind of just became like, like we just wanted to get closer to them, because it just drew us in that way, So, Hans would show me a frame and he was like, I know you were thinking this, but what do you think about this? And I would look at it and I would be like, oh, like, that's amazing. Like, let's shoot it. So it was part of, like what we planned. And then also, just like being present with them and, just that energy and the way they looked in that summer heat, like we just tried to embrace it as much as possible.
I love how you all played with the look on the screen. And I'm not technical. I do not know like the technical terms, but I know visually what is pleasing. And I loved how it seemed like it would go into like this film kind of noise kind of look on the screen. And then it would change up. And I don't see that. I was just like, oh my gosh, like it's so playful, but it's so good and detailed. Talk to me about that aspect of it as well, because I mean, I just really don't see people kind of change the look of a film within the film.
Yeah, so I think the moment in the film that you're talking about particularly is when they're in Malcolm X Park in DC.
Yes.
And then they end at Marvin. So I wanted that sequence to feel very magical. And we put film grain on the entire film, but in that sequence in particular, it's a bit more grainy than the rest of the film because I wanted it to feel, like what falling in love feels like. It's like time stops, the world stops. So even in the midst of being in this crowded park, it's like all they see is each other and all they see is them. And so we used the grain to try and like push that a little bit further. So it felt almost like it was, kind of lost in time or just very like nostalgic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, mission accomplished because I was just like really loving the changes that was taking place throughout the film. One of the things that you have to recognize is this all-star cast. Like, what in the world? I mean, it was like Blair Underwood, and it was Suzanne Douglas, and it was Kofi, then it was, you know what I'm saying? It's like Mac Wiles and Michael Ealy. It's like all of these people, I mean, what?
Yeah. No, I mean, this is like, show me your dream cast in one film.
Yeah.
The dream cast in one film was a thing. I have to give all the thanks to my casting director, who's also from Baltimore, Kim Taylor Coleman.
Come on, Kim.
You know Kim? Yes. She is just such an incredible collaborator that I look forward to working with many films down the line. But the first time I sat down with her, she had read the script and it was very clear, like she knew the direction that I wanted to go in. And for her, as someone who is a dark-skinned Black woman, she appreciated that I was really I wanted to be very intentional about the women that were in this film, the women who we show in love, and there's so many just like brown and dark-skinned women in multiple roles in the film. And I think that like, we don't see that. I don't see that. And, I think that they're all beautiful and I want to put more of them in film. And so, it was just really exciting for us, but also exciting for them. And we just got such a positive response. It was really like once the script started going out to people and inviting them to play these roles, they were like, I'm in, like when you shoot. And so, like I'm just so grateful to everyone who, like decided to come and play, because it was a magical experience.
You can tell the chemistry was jumping off the screen in so many scenes. You know the scene. I mean, it was just like, oh my gosh, it was so good. But even the conversations that spawned from this relatability with the cast of people that we've seen throughout the years, that we've grown to feel like we have these connections with, whether they're real or not real, like you feel connectivity to these actors and actresses. And I really want to talk about Suzanne Douglas because, was this her last film?
I do believe that this was her last role. Yes. I can't be certain of that, but yeah, Suzanne, wow. I'm just so grateful for the short time that I knew her, that I was able to meet her. And, she bodied that role. She just, every time she's on screen, like, she's just a joy, and, I just hope that she would be proud of the film and proud of her performance. I know that I am, and I feel so grateful and blessed to have, had the opportunity to witness her,
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that was something that was beautiful and magical, that, one of the things about this film industry is that you capture people in their essence and it lives on. And so you are now a part of her legacy and she's a part of yours. And I love that. I love that for us. And I love that for the culture that we got a chance to experience her.
That gives me chills, right? Because when I just think back and I still remember the moment when I met her, when she came to set. And, life is just so precious and so short. Like, you don't think that when you're meeting someone that your time with them is only going to be 3 years long or 1 year long. You know what I mean? Or you don't think when you meet someone, oh, this person is going to be part of my legacy, or I'm going to be a part of theirs. Like, that's just, it's so immortal.
Yeah.
It's so immortal.
Yeah, it really is. And like to be a creative and to create work that people that you will maybe never encounter can enjoy and can testify to. Like, this film sparked such dialogue, like from love to mother-daughter relationship, parental relationships. There are so many layers, mentorship, success. What does that really look like? How do you define that? Like, when do you get to a point where you're content, or are you ever content? Like, I literally was texting people and calling people and saying, you got to watch this movie because I want to talk about it with you, because I specifically want your perspective. And so, when you went to create this work and you were working with Felicia Pride, did you all work through these conversations as you were writing? Like, were you thinking like, oh yeah, that's it right there? Because I would want to know more. I've had love like this. Because I promise I saw myself. Like, I saw myself. Like, when you go off and the dude that you love is like, oh, I'm ready. But are you though? Are you ready? It's so many layers. How do you work through trying to tie that in together and not go down one road?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because, what we set out to do, I think, sometimes a project, it grows and it becomes bigger than you imagine, so we knew that we wanted to tell, this very real love story. We knew that we wanted to comment on, just social class and how that comes into play, and just in DC in general, right? Which is a city that is, very much, centered around the government, and most Black folks there, they do pursue, careers in politics, or, just one of those government jobs, right? And we knew that we wanted to tell a story about an artist in that place, right? That has a really, really rich history and culture, like with music, relationship to music, and, but a family that is very, like, traditional,
Mm-hmm.
And that they're like, why are you, you know, actively like wanting to struggle when there's so many other things that you can do. But we also wanted to, I think our approach to this film was we wanted to tell our stories, right? Like our love stories, our stories of our relationships with our friends, with our parents, you know what I mean? With our
Yes.
aunties who, you know, when I still go home, they still think, you know, you shoot weddings, you know what I mean? Like,
Girl, yes.
you know, so it was just really just about like making it as personal as possible. You know, and I think that like all the sort of you know, perspectives that audiences are pulling from it is just inherently like embedded in there.
Mm-hmm.
But not necessarily like all the things that you mentioned that we were like, okay, we got to touch on this and that and this and that. It was really just like, how do we make this story and these characters feel full and feel real and feel like people that we know?
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you know, like that's what we set out to do, you know?
Absolutely. You know, the art and in the film was just phenomenal. So, you know, when thinking through what you want to show on the screen for the visuals and, you know, the paint texture and all of that, like it's so many wonderful things that I think we could, that breathe life into us as we watched it, but also like that was like moving throughout the film. Talk to me about the artistry and why that was so important to you.
Yeah, so we a lot of the, you know, references were in the screenplay. You know, I didn't want this to be a film about a painter that didn't pay as much attention to the work that he was painting as it did to everything else in the story, like the love story.
Yeah.
And it was Thelma Golden, of the Studio Museum in Harlem. I went to meet her for the first time in New York, to get advice about making a film about a painter because I'm not a painter.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, like I'm in that world as a viewer, right? And as a receiver of that work, but I'm not creating in that space. And so it was, you know, I was very nervous about depicting it well, right? And authentically. And so I spoke with a lot of people to do research and take notes. And Thelma gave me some really good advice. She said, you know, I see a lot of films about artists,
Mm-hmm.
and where they fail is not enough attention is paid to the work that shows up in the film. And so if you are going to make a film about a painter, you and your team need to curate the work that shows up in the film in the same way that a gallerist or a museum would curate a show. And so, you know, I took that, you know, advice to my production designer, Nathan Parker, and we set out to do exactly that. So, you know, we curated all of the shows that happened in the film, you know, and
Wow.
yeah, and so it was like this progression. It was like, okay, first group show, then first solo, then second group show, then second solo. And how does the work, you know, transform and change over the course of that time? You know what I mean? As he becomes like more well
Mm-hmm.
known. And you know, finding Gerald Lavelle, who paints all of, you know, Kofi's characters'
Mm-hmm.
work was, I mean, when I saw his work, I was like, oh my God, this is it. This is everything that I envisioned.
I loved it. It was beautiful. I think something else that I really enjoy is whoever's running the social media account and the breakdown of the art and the from the film and the specific paintings, and then it was also like the artist, and then it was the Ava Ailey dance group, and it was just so many layers to artistry in this film, and I love that because if I had a question, I literally could go to the social media and it was like right there, like, oh, okay, this painting is this, you know. So I always thought I thought that was really well and a great add to the film overall. Like social media is killing it. doing a good job. How have you grown from, I would say, your independent projects to working on these major projects? Because now, it's Netflix and it's Ava and it's, you know what I'm saying? And it's Oprah and it's all of these people.
Yeah. So, I think as artists, we're constantly growing and evolving, right? And living and bringing our experiences into our work. And, I made Really Love 3 years ago, right? So
that's crazy.
Yeah. So the TV stuff, with Ava, and, on the Colin Kaepernick show, and then Cherish the Day, like this is happening 3 years after, making my first feature. And so
wait. So all of this is post Really Love?
Yes. All of the TV work is post Really Love, right?
You did that. Like what? Oh my gosh. I didn't even realize, because it seems like right now.
Yeah, no, it's funny because it's all coming out at the same time, but really there has been time in between and a lot of growth for me as a director and as a woman. I learned so much making Really Love, and I learned so much on my first episode of television, which was Colin in black and white. And now on Cherish the Day, I'm growing even more. So every project, I see myself, growing and becoming a better director, and just pulling, things that worked really well on Really Love, and, just pulling all of those things, but Really Love was a very special project, and every project is special, like Really Love taught me what love looks like. Like that's what that film taught me. And it taught me also how to be vulnerable in my work, because that is a very, Felicia, wrote the first draft of that story 10 years prior, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think as an artist, you can't tell a love story and your own love story not find its way into that, So
absolutely.
For me, Really Love is a very personal story.
Yeah. It feels personal when you're watching it. But man, that story is the story of so many of us, and so it's just kind of like, I think that's the other piece of the pie, right? It's like, dang, I'm not living this by myself. Like, somebody got to be going through it, because it done made it to my TV. So like I think that's the other part that I really enjoyed. When you are selecting projects, like what stands out to you for you to connect in a way that says, I want to direct this, or I want to produce this, or I want to be a part of this? How does that process work for you? Are you reading the scripts and then deciding what projects you're going to be on?
Yeah, definitely. If I'm not, generating the script myself, then I'm definitely looking for, something that I can latch on to, whether it's I can relate to the story or I see myself in it. If it's about a Black woman, if it's a love story, there's certain things that I'm drawn to. If it reminds me of home, if it affects me somehow, like if I'm emotional, if I get emotional while I'm reading it, they're usually, kind of the things that I use to kind of decide. And then also like the collaborators are really important, like who I'm going to be making it with, because, people don't talk about the process of making art enough, which is, I think, a lot, Really Love is telling the story also of that. It's like the process of making work and what that looks like. You know what I mean? Like what kind of, life and relationship you have to have outside of the studio, outside of the film set, right? In order to create a certain type of work that feels personal and that feels honest. So for me, yeah, it's equal both things.
Got you. You are also passionate about teaching others and mentoring and educating as well. Talk to me how that played into your work overall, because I know you may lead and teach, but as a teacher, you're also learning from other filmmakers that are interested in doing what you want to do and getting in places and spaces that you're in. So how does all of that work together as well?
Yeah, I mean, I love teaching and mentoring so much. I think that mentoring and teaching keeps you young, not only in spirit, but also in mind, because anybody who is coming up behind you, there's an eagerness that is untainted and, just very joyful and excited. And I think like sometimes when you've been doing something for a very long time, it's like you forget what it was like to make your first film or to write your first screenplay. And I think, teaching is like my constant connection to that youth and that joy in doing something for the first time. And it's just so inspiring, but also like, I want especially young Black filmmakers to know that they can be the authors of their own story. So that's why, I teach and I mentor a lot in Baltimore, because, Baltimore isn't a place where there's a lot of filmmakers just walking around and
Right.
a film industry. And so I think it's important to, to create that connection or pathway that like, if young people from that place want to pursue this, that they can see someone who looks like them,
Yeah, absolutely. For someone who is on the fence, they're trying to figure out, should they be a producer? Should they be a director? Should they be a writer? They're not sure. What would you tell them? How do you know, like, first of all, you do it all. So how do you know, like, what your lane is, or if you want to do it all?
I think it's important to try it all until you know. I think, for me, my path to directing wasn't like straight and narrow. Like I studied photography first and then cinematography. And then, finally wrote my first screenplay and really got the bug for directing. But it wasn't like, I wasn't immediately like, I want to be a director. It was, like me coming into directing, from photography and then cinematography, so I think if you know that you want to tell stories, but you're not sure like what role you want to play, then I think that you should, play every role. And I think that, me having an experience as, a photographer, cinematographer, producer, that I think makes me be able to collaborate with those people who are in that position, in a better way. Like I understand the language to a certain degree, and also it just builds a respect for all of the roles. It's like people say, you want to be a good director, take an acting class. Like I think that is some of the best advice, right, for any director, because how the approaches that an actor is using, you understand the language, you understand how to communicate with them, but also, again, like you develop a respect for their craft.
Absolutely.
And so to someone who is interested in film, but not yet quite sure what it is they want to do, I would say that they should try everything until they're going to know, like when it sticks, they're going to know, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much for taking out the time to talk to me. I know we really got it in, squeeze it in between your schedule. So I really appreciate you sewing into me and giving back to me as an interviewer and as a person that is interested in your work and in film. How do we stay in contact with you? How do we keep up with what you got going on?
I'm on Instagram, Angel Kristi Williams, and then Twitter, Angel Kristi WMS. So,
right.
And then also my website as well is just angelkristiwilliams.com. But I appreciate you so much, Queen. Like, thank you for the conversation and thank you for coming to see the work on the screen. Like, I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. I mean, the fact that you giving back to Jimmy has given back to me. And so it's like this beautiful cycle that goes. And so I appreciate you sowing into him, because literally he takes that and he sows into us and he sows into his team of people. And that's kind of how this whole full circle moment happened in the first place. And so again, I know you're busy. And so this means the world to me. And I cannot wait to see your next projects that come out. And I want to support you through and through.
Thank you. I appreciate that.